Hello everyone, and welcome back to my second ever video. Today we are going to be uncovering the strange circumstances regarding a mysterious disappearance in local Germany. I hope you guys all enjoy, and thank you for watching. The date is January 24th, 2019. In a town in Germany going by the name of Moors, a husband and wife enjoy breakfast together. Typical of after breakfast activities, the husband leaves and heads off to work. This man being 72-year-old Karl-Josef Wirtz. Unknowingly to the wife, this would be the last time she ever laid eyes upon Karl. Karl's wife started to get suspicious as to where her husband's whereabouts were after he failed to show up for a scheduled doctor's appointment that same day. As a result, she begins texting him, asking him the usual questions like, "Where are you and what are you doing?" Karl actually responds to these messages, albeit in a very cryptic manner. To the response of "Where are you and what are you doing?" Karl abruptly decides to tell his wife that he is leaving and he needs time alone. What he says he's actually doing, though, is very uncertain. He claims to be heading to a monastery.
So, where's the monastery?
The name of this monastery being, in quotations, the House of Silence. According to Karl's family, he was actually a very deeply invested Christian. Due to this, they had no glaring suspicions about his decision to travel to this so-called House of Silence. Despite this, suspicions and worries did grow after his communication via text message stopped altogether of February within that same year. Despite communications halting in February of that year, Karl-Josef Wirtz was not reported missing until August of that same year, a whole 6 months after communication had halted. Not only this, Karl wasn't reported missing by his wife, but rather his brother. Once reported, a police investigation began into the whereabouts of Karl-Josef Wirtz. For nearly an entire year, there were no major discoveries, no advancements into the investigation, until one day Karl's car was found very close to his workplace. It had been determined via surveillance footage that his car had actually been there since April of 2019. Recall that this is after he disappeared and after his communication was lost forever. Up on the screen, you can see just how close his car was parked to where he usually worked. In fact, that's like a 5-minute walk max. The discovery of Karl's car brings a variety of questions into this investigation. How did the car even end up in the place in which it was found? Did Karl himself drive it there? If so, what was Karl texting his wife about going to some southern monastery called the House of Silence when in reality he was in the very city in which he lived? If Karl didn't drive his car to where it was found, then who did? Who had access to his keys? Who knew where his workplace was and where to park the car? All of these questions intrigue me, and who knows what the answers may be. After the discovery of his car, the case went cold. That would be until April of 2023, over 4 years later, when something strange turned up in his workplace. Karl's workplace was actually a family-owned business operated by him. Due to his vanishing of over 4 years, unfortunately, the operation and ownership of this business had to be relinquished to his nephew. Upon entering this business, within the very first couple of days of operation, his nephew found something criminal, something unsettling, I guess you could call it. Within a dark corner of one of the more untouched storage rooms within Karl's business, an old, decrepit box was found. Within this box, Karl's old, disappeared typewriter was found. Other personal photographs of Karl's workspace and desk were found. Two handmade balaclavas, or little face masks, I guess you could call them, were found, and a pair of blue overalls. Obviously, these items in and of themselves are not entirely super suspicious and weird. However, blood on the blue overalls was found. As shown on the screen, you can see blood on the upper portion of the overalls, smeared almost. It is also reported that on the cuffs of the pants and on the really lower extremity portion of the pants, more egregious and larger bloodstains were found. Upon DNA examination of the blood, it was determined to belong to none other than Karl-Josef Wirtz. But it doesn't end there. As I mentioned earlier, within the box, two face masks were found. Upon forensic and DNA examination of these face masks, there were unidentified DNA blotches all throughout the material. These face masks did not belong to Karl. How did they get in there? How did they get in this box within Karl's business, stuffed away with blue overalls containing splotches and different smears of Karl's blood? How do they relate to one another? And more importantly, do these unidentified blotches of DNA belong to people who could have potentially abducted or harmed or done who knows what to Karl? In terms of the story and actual evidence, that's about where it ends. So let's get into some theories. The first theory is that Karl willingly or voluntarily disappeared. It is noted that while he did own this one singular business in the heart of Rheinberg, it wasn't successful. It is reported that before the focus onto this one installment of his toy business, he actually did own and operate dozens of the same chain within the local area. Unfortunately, his business tanked. He was nearing bankruptcy, and as a result, had to close every single one of his shops, all of his businesses, except for this one last one that was inherited by his nephew. In many cases of murder or abductions or disappearances, one of the main causes is finance. If someone's financials are doing poorly, their chance of committing a crime, committing suicide, developing mental health issues, all of these skyrocket. A viable possibility, and something that many people seem to want to believe, is that Karl simply left to go start a new life, or decided to end his own life due to the fact that his financials and his business that he worked so hard on were crumbling and failing. One of the arguments against the case that he disappeared voluntarily is just the state of Germany. It is reportedly very, very difficult to just up and leave and go invisible voluntarily in Germany. It's a country where accessing money, healthcare, buying a home, doing anything, especially financially related in a sense, is very, very difficult to get done anonymously. They track everything. Disappearing, wiping your face, wiping your name off of Germany, off of financial records, would be very difficult. And me personally, I do not believe a 72-year-old man who's just been chilling with his wife is going to go through all of that and disappear. I don't believe that is the case. The second theory regarding Karl's disappearance was that foul play was involved, whether it be some unknown assailants or, in other cases, his family potentially. What I believe and what seems to be the general consensus regarding Karl's disappearance is that there is foul play within this case. There's a reason for this. When you look at the evidence, there are a lot of strange objects, strange incidences, things that just don't line up if it were just a normal disappearance, someone getting lost, or, as explained before, a potential voluntary leave of absence, basically. The first piece of evidence that comes to my mind when I think about this potential theory are the text messages. As explained earlier, Karl stayed in communication with his wife during his time of absence. However, it is explained in police reports and from interviews and questioning with the wife that she could not 100% pinpoint the fact that the man or whomever she was communicating with via text was actually Karl. And what I mean by this is if you guys text your parents or if you text a friend or a significant other, each person has somewhat of a unique voice, I guess you could say. Although all you're really looking at are words and letters and all that on a screen, the way people string together sentences and the way they communicate and get different points across, it's pretty unique from person to person. Now imagine a 72-year-old man and his wife. They've likely been married for a long time. They know each other very, very well, and they communicate via messaging a ton. They've probably sent thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of messages to one another. They should have a relatively good idea as to the voice, in a sense, that their partner has. Karl's wife had an idea as to what her husband's text messaging voice was like. She said that she could not pinpoint. She was not certain that the man texting her was actually Karl. While this doesn't mean that the man or whomever messaging her was or was not Karl, it does raise the question, was someone else messaging from his phone? Someone who may have abducted him or killed him or taken him hostage, who knows what. They could have been messaging with Karl's wife in order to postpone any investigation or try and bring the suspicions around his disappearance down a little bit. And not only is this theory of foul play supported by this piece of evidence, but also the fact that within this strange box located within that storage room in Karl's old business, two face masks, as you can see on the screen, I'll go ahead and put the photo up again. These masks had unidentified DNA on them. Maybe the DNA was an assailant. Maybe it was someone involved in the foul play who abducted him. It makes sense when you think of people robbing or people harming other people. What do they all wear when they want to conceal their identity? A mask. So you have this person who's disappeared. The text messages, as explained by the wife, don't exactly completely line up with how Karl usually speaks. And in his business, 4 years later, within a box in which his blue overalls were found, stained and covered in his own blood, there were two black masks covered with DNA of two unidentified people. When you piece all of these different segments of this investigation together, it is skewed heavily towards the idea that foul play was involved, and perhaps one of these unknown assailants found using the DNA on the masks was the person or were the people that potentially abducted him or harmed him. But that isn't it. You also have to consider his car. It is to be noted that Karl disappeared in January. After mid-February, he was never heard from again. His family, everyone who knew him, thought that, as he explained, he was going down to the House of Silence. Quite an ominous name, if you ask me. But instead of doing this, he could have been who knows where. But what you have to consider is the fact that in April of 2019, this is after his disappearance, after he, everyone thought he was going to South Germany to go to this monastery, his car was found. Just a few minutes walk, very close to where his workshop was, to where the bloodied overalls and the masks were found. Who moved his car? Karl was a normal man. Well, I'd like to think he was a normal man, but you never really know. If he was in town to move his car in April of that year, why was he not spotted? Why did he didn't make any sort of communication with his family or friends? Why? Why would he come back to move his car after 2 months of being gone, vanished off the face of the earth, just to not say anything and disappear again, to never be seen? When you think about that, the opportunity of someone else swooping in, taking his keys and moving his car around comes into play. This idea, paired with everything else I just spoke about, heavily pushes me and pushes a lot of different people that have looked into this case and have opinions on it to believe that foul play was involved. And not only am I saying this, I'm not just speculating. All the people on Reddit, on the news articles, they're not just speculating either, because currently the investigation is still open. It hasn't been completely shut yet. And actually, the police of Rheinberg, the people actually investigating into this case, have deemed his disappearance involuntary, not voluntary. So while a lot of people think he may have just left on his own accord, a majority of people, including the actual police department and detectives looking into the case, disagree. They heavily believe that foul play was either involved or as a whole it was an involuntary experience, whether it be from he suffered a mental illness or he had some sort of drug problem, who knows. But one thing is agreed upon by a lot of people, and that is the fact that this is an involuntary disappearance. putting this together with every piece of evidence I just said, foul play, I would say, is likely the largest and the most obvious answer in this case. As of now, there aren't any lead suspects. In fact, there's really no solid suspects regarding his disappearance. But there are speculations and theories circulating online. And before I get into this theory, I just want to say that I am completely neutral on this. I am not going to point fingers. I don't believe this person did this and that or whatever. Again, I just want to preface this. I don't mean any disrespect. I'm just going to say what some of the theories are. Probably the most accepted and followed theory regarding foul play in this case is that it was actually family related, and that his wife or his immediate family, his brother, for example, had a part in his disappearance. There's one main reason for this. As I've kind of touched upon early on in the video, there's not much concrete evidence linking any of these loopholes or open weird things to any one person. However, what we can do is infer stuff. I want you to think about this for a second. You've been married to someone for quite a while. Your relationship is seemingly in a good standing position with them. And one day they just disappear. They remain in contact with you, but they literally just left. They gave you no warning and they said they're going to some religious monastery in southern Germany. And you live in like north central Germany or so. I don't know the exact area, but the monastery he said he was going to was quite far. Add on top of this the fact that when you're communicating with this person who is doing something very, very weird, you cannot pinpoint the fact that you're actually speaking to your husband. How are you not a little weirded out by this, I guess you could say? Despite this, his wife neglected to report his absence for 6 months, even after total communication stopped. Not even within the first couple of weeks when he just up and dipped. Not like that's weird or anything, you know. She didn't report to the police. She didn't say anything. After he was gone, no communication whatsoever for 6 months. You have to consider the fact that even if he was actually at a monastery, or even if, he said he was going to the monastery for some relaxed time, who knows, and was being truthful, this is a 72-year-old man doing something very, very odd, and she just ignores it. After he stops communicating with you, how are you not going to the police within a couple of days to report him missing? It just baffles me, let alone wait 6 months. And it wasn't even her that reported it to the police. It was his brother. So when you think about it this way, that to me is just incredibly weird. Like I said, I'm not pointing any fingers. There's no evidence. It's just quite odd to me. Is it not odd that this is the circumstance regarding his disappearance, paired with all the other evidence that there are potential aspects of foul play? It just doesn't make sense to me. Unfortunately, due to the lack of concrete evidence and actual suspects in this case, there have not really been any further developments. I personally hope that somewhere out there Karl is alive. Maybe he is in that monastery praying and living a happy life, but we'll never truly know until some more breakthroughs come. I wanted to say thank you guys for watching the video. If you have any recommendations for improvements, with every video I make, I'm going to try to improve and make them more enjoyable. If you guys have any cases you'd like me to look at, whether they be solved or unsolved or even paranormal in nature, leave a comment. I'll look into it and try and make a video. I am a student, so there are going to be weeks where I'm more busy or less busy. This week happened to be one of those ones where it was after lots of exams, so had some free time. Today being Friday, and this weekend, I'll try and get a video done basically every day. So just leave some comments. Let me know how to improve. And hopefully I'll see you guys next time. Thank you and goodbye.